Sometimes when you lose someone, the impact goes far beyond gut-wrenching sadness. It leaves you drowning in a sea of confusion, anger, and pain. This is not grief from death alone. It is grief tied to the loss of family, belonging, identity, safety, and closure. It is what Erin Watson calls scapegoat grief.
Dr. Shalini Jebasingh on cultivating purpose, joy, and fulfillment at work.
Hi, I'm Shalini. In this episode, we are looking at what happens to your work capacity when you are experiencing grief that is confusing, bewildering, and brings a sense of relief. This is a grief that is complex, unclear, and often lacks the social right to mourn because of your experiences with the person who passed away. Now, here we will cover what complex grief looks like compared to normal grief, how this suffocating grief affects your work, what you can do to manage your work capacity now and regain it for the long term. You experience complex grief when you were a child in a dysfunctional family system where you were manipulatively blamed, discredited, or just iced out. You were labeled the black sheep. In some families, abuse is covert. A parent may hide behind well-meaning words, claiming they were correcting you while withholding support and falsely blaming you. This is very confusing to a child. Such a parent typically targets the child who dares to call out unfair treatment. This is like the whistleblower retaliation, but within the family system. When other family members join in and tell the same false version of events, you start to doubt your own lived experience. It is called triangulation. As an adult, you may think that you had a fabulous childhood, but you may feel intense anxiety at the thought of visiting this abusive parent or those who support them. Now, if the world thinks your parent is mean and cruel, it's one thing. But if those around you think the parent is morally good while you are being intentionally hurt, you carry an invisible wound alone. And when that abusive parent dies, it triggers a whole new level of internal distress. You may feel safe, yet alone. You may feel relief, but it's mixed with guilt. At work, this internal chaos shows up in many different ways. You may be unable to judge or prioritize under pressure like you could. There will be a change in how you interpret conflict and who you trust. You may become hypersensitive to perceived threats, or you may be unable to tolerate ambiguity. Leading people becomes extremely draining or tiring, and it can eventually lead to burnout. This happens because you're not just grieving a person. You're grieving the family you never had. You're grieving the safety you never felt and the false identity around shame and blame that your family put on you. Unlike conventional grief, there is no funeral for these invisible losses. Now, in a healthy family, children see parents respect boundaries and support dreams. In an unhealthy family, there is obvious dysfunction. Parents may be selfish or even addicted to alcohol or anything else, but the children know the truth. My family is awful. But in a covertly dysfunctional family, the abuse is hidden. The abusive parent will minimize, disregard, or abandon a targeted child. The child who's the prized possession will be protected, and you and other siblings in the family will be expected to protect this child. To everyone, even you, it may seem like you have a devoted father or mother, and you are the problem. But that is not true. You're living a facade. And rather than addressing this wickedness of the abuser, the family picks the child the abusive parent has targeted And this one child is consciously or unconsciously assigned the role to carry the blame for the family's distress. Over time, this creates deep internal wounds in the scapegoated child. Now, as an adult leader with the parent's death, suddenly you may find yourself having self-doubt, shame, and false guilt. Hear me, it's false guilt. You may be hyper alert, confused about what is true, and find it difficult to trust what you feel. The grief is more complex because it is often mixed with trauma that you cannot articulate but you can feel. In healthy families, when a parent passes away, siblings come together to support each other. Even when death is natural, grief takes time. But usually, after a few months or a year, they can reorganize and function as before. But complex, disenfranchised grief, it's different. Here, the family may prioritize DNA loyalty over truth and love. So no one in the family will acknowledge your experience. You may even be isolated or ostracized by family members who mimic the abusive parent. All of this profoundly affects work capacity. So if you find yourself caught up in a complex grief, here are 3 things you can do to manage your work capacity. First, name the grief. Language reduces confusion. When you say, I'm grieving the loss of safety, I was my family's scapegoat, your nervous system begins to organize around truth, and truth is freeing. Second, separate grief from self-blame to identify false guilt. Conduct an objective audit of the past. Do this with a professional as it can become very, very triggering. Divide your life into 5-year chunks. Complete the ACE, Adverse Childhood Experience Assessment, and the Life Events Checklist. I've provided the links to both of them below. Then, answer these 3 questions. Did I feel safe and protected with each of my parents and my siblings? Did I feel loved by each of my parents and my siblings? Did I feel betrayed or abandoned by each of my parents and siblings? You may see a pattern emerging right here. Also, if you're plagued with guilt about whether or not you were a good son or a good daughter, reframe your engagement with your parent as an adult. Instead of asking, did I give enough? Evaluate the proportion of your emotional energy and capital that you have invested. Chances are you committed a higher percentage of your available bandwidth to a family that offered a far lower percentage in return. Don't minimize your investment and amplify the proportionately small gifts that you got. Third, protect your work capacity intentionally. This time will be very triggering. So schedule recovery time after difficult meetings. Use apps like breathwork or practice box breathing to calm your nervous system. Use movement, music, nutrition, and nature. If you're a person of faith, reading the Psalms or Job aloud can bring calm. Lastly, integrate your body, mind, and spirit. That is, be in sync with what you think, feel, and do. A good way to begin is by noticing your physical reactions. Did your palms sweat when someone said something in a meeting? Or did your chest tighten? Don't dismiss it. Your body is in fight or flight. Later, think through why that specific moment triggered you. Let your mind be present for your body's reactions. You may not be able to answer immediately why your body flooded with cortisol in a fight or flight response, but you're now aware of it. It will help you start to reconcile what happened to you and shift from thinking it is who you are. Always remember, regaining work capacity is not linear. A strategy that works today may need to be changed tomorrow. But here is the good news. Healing from this grief can deepen your empathy and transform how you build work culture and recognize invisible pain in others. If you're confused and hurting, your feelings are normal. This is the right emotion to have. It is your body, mind, and spirit acknowledging the truth. Give yourself permission to live that truth. It will free you. In the short run, you can protect your work capacity, and in the long run, you will thrive in work and in life. We end here today. In case you're wondering what the symptoms of complex grief might look like, I have shared below a link with the symptoms, a list of symptoms that you might recognize. I've also shared below the links to the ACE questionnaire and also the life events checklist. In our next episode, we will discuss traumatic grief. It is the grief you have with the sudden loss of someone you love and how to regain work capacity while you're walking through traumatic grief. For now, follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn to stay in the loop. And as always, I wish you the best work life.
Thank you for joining Dr. Shalini Jebasingh, where we cultivate and live with purpose, joy, and fulfillment at work. We'll see you in the next episode.